Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this Q&A session for the Global Education Office on Study Abroad. My name is Romlin Cochran, and I'm an Assistant Director in the Office for Communications and Marketing. And with me, I also have Shelby Dodd, who is our Global Education Advisor. And we, again, thank you for joining us, and we hope you had a chance to view the presentation, the recorded presentation on Study Abroad, and all the different options and considerations that your student should be making, or you as a student. And we're really here for the next hour to just answer any lingering questions you may have. Again, feel free to submit those. We did have some submitted in advance, and so we'll go off of those questions first, and then we'll get through as many as we can. But again, let us know if you have any questions, whether it be related to study abroad or not. Shelby and I are both Hokies and can answer any just general questions on coming to Virginia Tech as a student as well. So we'll start with first question here. Sorry, let me pull that up real quick. The first question is, other than freshman year, are there any required semesters on campus, or would we be able to frequently study abroad? And that is a great question to start us off with. Do you want to try and tackle that one for us, Shelby?
Absolutely. So that's a great question. I think one thing to think about is the great thing about study abroad is it can be flexible. There's study abroad that's as short as a week, study abroad that is as long as an academic year. So there's really not a lot of restrictions about what semesters you would have to spend on campus. And in fact, study abroad can be in between semesters too. So if a summer session or winter or spring break fit better for your academic plans, that could really be a good option for you. And there are some specific requirements related to transfer credit that we could talk through that are also available on our website. If you just search for the words transfer credit, you could see kind of some of those policies, but not all study abroad would affect that. So there's just a few little things you'd want to talk to us about to make sure that you're good to go. But really every semester after your freshman year, or like I said, even school breaks like winter, spring, and summer break can be great opportunities to study abroad.
Great. Next question, a very thoughtful question here about financially how study abroad works. So do out-of-state students still have to pay out-of-state tuition for the semester if they're going abroad, or how, just in general, how is that set up?
Definitely. So study abroad, I like to say, is kind of an umbrella term. And under that umbrella live lots of different kinds of programs from, like I said, varying lengths, 2 weeks or a week to a full year. But then also varying structures based on whether you're going on a Virginia Tech program or an outside program, such as going to a university that you're enrolling in directly or going with a study abroad provider, a company or an organization that organizes study abroad programs. And each of those is a little bit different with who you're paying, and because of that, where your tuition cost comes from. So if you go on a Virginia Tech faculty-led program or a Virginia Tech exchange semester at one of our partner universities around the world, you would be paying your Virginia Tech tuition and fees to Virginia Tech. So if you're an out-of-state student, that means your out-of-state tuition. If you're an in-state student, that means your in-state tuition. But the great news is those aren't your only options, and we encourage out-of-state students to talk to our office to help identify the best program type for them. And oftentimes the best program type looks like a study abroad provider program or enrolling directly in a university. And we refer to that as autonomous study or direct enroll. And those options can be a great fit, especially in places where the tuition cost in that country or on that program is a little bit lower than it might be even at Virginia Tech. And those are great options. We have lots of Hokies going abroad that way each year. So it really just depends on kind of financially what your options look like, as well as how long you want to be abroad for. And there are some considerations with financial aid and scholarships as well. We have a lot of that information on our website, but you want to talk to us to make sure you're finding a program that fits well with any aid you're receiving, any grants or loans that you'd be applying to study abroad as well.
Great. We're getting a lot of questions, or we did get questions on just specific study abroad programs, particularly in relation to certain majors. For instance, someone is interested on specific programs for architecture or perhaps an in design major. So we could talk a bit about specific programs, but also just kind of in general about if I am a certain major, how would I go about finding those types of programs?
Definitely. So, I'll start a little specific, but then get more general. We have some really great programs that are Virginia Tech programs, even semester-long opportunities for architecture majors. We have a phenomenal study abroad center called the Steger Center that offers a semester-long study abroad program focused on architecture. And it's a really amazing experience to get to be abroad at our study abroad center in Riva San Vitale, Switzerland, just north of the Italian border, to get to study abroad with other Hokies and faculty in a new context and new environment. So that's one example that comes to mind, but we also have lots of exchange partnerships open to architecture and design majors. And, that's one example, right? And there's lots of program types, like I mentioned, and we'll work with you to find a program that aligns with what you need academically. And it's also important to think about, regardless of what your major is, each semester looks a little different. So one semester you might be focusing on a few pathways courses that you need to fulfill and some general elective credits maybe. And you have a little bit more flexibility to find a program that gives you classes that you're really interested in those areas. Maybe another semester you have some really strict requirements for your major and you're going to need to find a program that gives you those classes so that you stay on track academically. And we can help you figure out, as well as your academic advisor will be a really big resource in that process, to identify what semester works best and gives me the most flexibility to find a program. And then we can help you talk about, what are the classes you will need? I usually talk to students and say, what are your must-haves? Like, what do you have to have? And then what are your want-to-haves? So maybe you're interested in taking a language course, but if you had to change that around, it'd be okay. So we can help you identify a program that meets those academic needs based on your major. And like I said, it's different by major. For most students, I would say sophomore and junior year will give you the most flexibility. Particularly for some majors, you have a mandatory senior design course or something like that you need to be back on campus for. So sophomore and junior year will typically have the most flexibility.
Right, and again, sort of along the same lines, if a student is looking for a study abroad program in a particular area of the world, let's say Western Europe or even specifically a country like Italy, what would you suggest is the best way to kind of start that program search and see what's available?
Definitely. You can start with our website. I'd say, as I mentioned, like I said, study abroad is an umbrella. We offer lots of amazing programs through Virginia Tech faculty, as well as through our exchange partnerships. And that's a place to start, is going to our website, and you'll find those opportunities listed. You'll also see something called VT partner programs, there's a handful of them, but they are usually tailored towards specific majors, sometimes at specific universities or with certain study abroad companies. So all of those options will come up in our program search. If you go to our homepage, our website's globaleducation.vt.edu, and you'll be able to scroll down and see a button that looks like a search window. And you can click on that and do a basic program search and see all of the options that Virginia Tech has facilitated for students. And you can click on those and learn a little bit more about what classes does it provide, or is it at a university in a certain city or country? You can sort even by country if you wanted to do that. But then I would encourage you to think beyond Virginia Tech too. There's study abroad providers that offer programming all over the world in different cities for different lengths of time. And there's also something called ISEP, I-S-E-P. You can just Google that and it'll come up for a study abroad program search. It's the International Student Exchange Program. And we work with them to find universities that are a good fit for students all over the world, both on exchange, where you pay us your tuition, Virginia Tech, your tuition and fees, and direct enroll, where you pay that university. So good options for in-state and out-of-state students. So I would say there's kind of three places to search. There's us, there's study abroad providers, and then there's ISEP. And you can even go beyond that too. And we could talk about that through our office, how to do that kind of a search. And I would say, if you're thinking about a specific country because it's one you're familiar with, or maybe a little bit more comfortable with, that's awesome. But it's also great to think about a place that you maybe never considered. And so I always like to tell students, think big and then hone in on a certain country or region. But you never know what's out there unless you start a search to begin with. So maybe consider somewhere you never thought you'd be interested in. It could be a great experience.
I think that's great advice, Shelby. And I'll just also mention that we just about 2 weeks ago, we just finished our annual Study Abroad Week. And we obviously had to go virtual with that this year. And a lot of the pages are still available on our website. And again, that's www.globaleducation.vt.edu. And a lot of the program providers that Shelby mentioned earlier that are non-Virginia Tech providers, Many of them held sessions during that week and provided us recordings, and those are available on the website as well, along with a host of different faculty-led programs that also held sessions. So there's a wealth of information on the website right now, and so we'd encourage you to take a look at that as well. And that transitions me to the next question, just about program types. Often students kind of think of study abroad as just a certain, sort of a course that is set up for them. But as we know, there are different ways you can go about studying abroad. And we talk about program types a lot. Can you talk a little bit about how a student might decide what type of program might be best for them, given certain considerations, whether that be academic or even personal?
Definitely. So I would say one thing to think about at the very beginning of all this, before you think about program types or before you think about, necessarily what location or what classes am I going to take, is why do I want to study abroad? What are my goals? And that looks different for different people, and that's okay. It might be that you want to connect with your heritage. It might be that you want to study a language you've been excited about for years. It might be that you want to go try amazing cuisine in a region of the world you've never traveled to before. There's lots of different amazing reasons to study abroad. But I think honing in on your goals before you start the search process is really important, so that you can stay true to what your values are and what you really want out of the experience. And so we can help you find programs that will align with your goals, regardless of the program type. And I think the biggest goal that we hope each student gets out of study abroad is being in a new situation that pushes your ideas of who you are and pushes your ideas of what the world is, and kind of challenges you a little bit in a comfortable but also uncomfortable way. We want students to be in new situations. And so regardless of the program types, and I'll explain a little bit of the differences in just a second, it's important to think about those goals at the starting line. And then kind of from there, there's some specific considerations. And so I think one is the length of time you want to be abroad. Our faculty-led programs are often a great short-term opportunity because they take place usually over spring break, winter break, or summer break. We do have some great faculty-led programs that are semester long at the Steger Center, as I mentioned, and at other locations. And those are great opportunities to connect with other Hokies, to be abroad. For some students, it's a really exciting, maybe the first time they've traveled outside the country, and so they want a higher level of support and to feel like they're part of that Virginia Tech community while they're abroad still, and that can be a really great experience. So shorter term and a little bit more supportive with a group of other Hokies and a VT faculty member. That's kind of our faculty-led programs typically. And some of those as well, it's really helpful to know, actually for all of them, at the starting line of going on that program, exactly what classes you're getting credit for. So if you have maybe a really specific major you need classes to apply to, you can get those classes up front, and they're VT credit. So you're not worrying about how it will transfer back to the university. It counts as an A through F letter grade still. It's just like you're taking any class at Tech, but you happen to be abroad. So that's a great fact about our faculty-led programs as well. I'll say kind of the next phase beyond that would be thinking a little bit longer term. Maybe you want to be abroad for a full semester, and that's where our VT exchange semesters can be a really great opportunity. We have partnerships with over 50 universities around the world, and that partnership means that we send students to that university and they send students to us, while all the students pay their home university tuition. So especially for our in-state students, that's a great option. And that's kind of where that in-state, out-of-state distinction becomes important, is thinking about financially, if you have that great in-state tuition rate, that could be a really phenomenal way to spend a semester abroad while still paying a very low relative rate for your tuition compared to the cost of some other study abroad opportunities. And then kind of beyond that, the doors open wide to all the non-VT program types, and they range from also short-term to long-term. Study abroad providers provide a high level of support. So maybe if you're a student who is also going abroad for the first time, or you have specific needs that you'd want facilitated while you're abroad, that's something that, of course, we'll work with you for any faculty-led or exchange semester as well to discuss maybe, is this program a good fit? But study abroad providers can really give a high level of support in those situations too. So that's a great option if you're looking for that. Also a great option if you have a really specific area of interest or area of the world you want to go to that Virginia Tech doesn't facilitate a program to right now. If you use our program search and you say, I really want to go study, I want to be in Iceland and I want to be there in the summertime, I don't know, for example. We have an exchange partner in Iceland, but maybe if there's one specific program that's just not exactly the right time or the right fit, you can look for a study abroad provider that's offering exactly what you're looking for. And there's some really unique programs out there. So those are kind of generally how I would break down those program type distinctions and maybe who they're a good fit for.
Great. Another thing that you just touched on is obviously the financial aspect of studying abroad, and that's frequently a barrier that we hear from students. In some cases, students don't consider studying abroad at all because of the notion that studying abroad can be expensive. What resources are there in terms of scholarships and financial aid, or just other funding opportunities do we have that we can offer students?
Definitely. So for any students going on a Virginia Tech tuition paying program, so that's your VT faculty led programs and that your VT semester exchange opportunities, you can apply for a GEO scholarship. And so those are scholarships that our office administers, and you apply through Scholarship Central, and then you can also get the application information on our website. But you can look for scholarships outside of our office as well. And so our office does facilitate those for VT tuition paying programs, but outside of our office at Virginia Tech, there are scholarship opportunities too. So within your department or college, there might be study abroad scholarships that you can look into. Like I said, you should look at Scholarship Central to see what's out there. We do have specific scholarships as well for programs at the Steger Center. And so those are often great opportunities if you are looking at a Steger Center program, one of those semester long or maybe summer programs abroad at that location. So those are a few opportunities, but there's also lots of non-Virginia Tech scholarships. There's an organization, just one of many, for example, called Diversity Abroad that administers scholarships, and you can look at their website. It's a great resource to learn about studying abroad, but they do administer scholarships as well. And there's lots of other search engines. Our website does have links to external scholarship databases you can explore, and you can also talk to us if you're kind of stuck in the process of, when should I be applying for these scholarships? What are my deadlines? We'll be happy to walk you through that.
Along the same vein, in terms of financial aid, if a student is receiving financial aid to attend Virginia Tech, for instance, is that something that can be applied to a study abroad program?
In many cases, yes, your financial aid can be applied to study abroad. That's something that you'll talk to our office about and fill out a little bit of paperwork for, but you'll also work very closely with the financial aid and scholarships office, and that they'll be able to actually help you make the distinction of if your specific kind of aid, grants and loans can be applied to a study abroad program. It also, like I said, depends on the study abroad program type, whether the money for that program is coming to Virginia Tech or the money for that program is going out to a third party, a study abroad provider, for example. So that can be a distinction that could affect whether or not it applies. And it also just, you want to make sure you're staying in the loop with our office and with the financial aid office to make sure that you know exactly when deadlines for billing are, exactly when your aid would be dispersed, because sometimes that timeline can be really important when you're coming up on study abroad cost deadlines. So more information about that is at our website, but oftentimes, yes, it can be applied. So I don't want that to be a deterrent. You should definitely talk to us, and we'll help you find a way for you to find funding, whether that's through Virginia Tech or elsewhere.
Right. Switching gears a little bit, we also received several questions on, again, I think this is one of the perceived barriers to study abroad that we often hear from students, but in terms of how would a study abroad experience delay graduation? How do we ensure that study abroad fits seamlessly into to the course path and so forth, so that we're not adding extra semesters to your academic career?
Definitely. So like I said a little bit earlier, talking to your academic advisor is a key piece of all this. You should be talking to them early and often, and really figuring out, what are the classes that I need in which semesters. And it's important to have a clear plan so that when you start to talk about studying abroad with them and communicate that interest early on, say, I'm interested in studying abroad, even if it's 2 years from now, I want to go abroad, and how can I structure my classes in a way that makes sense so that that's possible. It's going to depend on your major, and it's going to depend on your specific requirements each semester, but we will help you talk to our office. We will help you find a way that study abroad can fit for your academic needs. And for some students, it is true that a fall and spring semester abroad is not possible, or just a fall or just a spring semester is not possible academically because of the course of study that you've mapped out. But that doesn't mean you can't study abroad. That just means you should think outside the boundaries of fall and spring semesters. And that's why we have so many great programs offered in the summer, the winter, spring break even. There's even some really unique courses at Virginia Tech where you're taking a class and then over spring break you travel together. We call those our embedded programs. And so that's a really unique opportunity to get that academic credit while still getting the experience of going abroad as a Hokie. So it can just look a little different for different majors. If you do have a little bit more flexibility, maybe you're coming in with some transfer credit already from DE classes or AP classes, for example, you might have some more flexibility where, for example, a semester abroad is possible because you only maybe need one major requirement that semester, but it's going to look a little different for each Hokie. So it's important to talk to your academic advisor and talk to us.
This question I love, and it is, can you study abroad multiple times?
My favorite question. Yes, definitely. And I think it's great to think about that before you get to Virginia Tech and early on in your VT plan, because the earlier you're thinking, I might want to go abroad multiple times, the better your chances of planning those multiple experiences are. So maybe that means you go abroad for a short-term faculty-led program the summer after your freshman year or the summer after your sophomore year. And then you choose to go abroad for a full semester a year after that. So maybe during sophomore or junior year. And you get that kind of both of those experiences, one that's a little bit more short term, but with other Hokies for a specific course, maybe getting to travel some, and the other that you get to live like a local student in that context and be at that university and really immerse yourself in that culture and that environment. So I think it's great to think about multiple experiences because you can get a diversity of where you go as well as what the experience is like while you're there.
A few questions on sort of what I call, I guess, myths to studying abroad. And one question is, I can't study abroad, or one thought is I can't study abroad because I don't speak a foreign language, or my major isn't international or related. And what are some of the things that we would respond to students who may think that?
Definitely. So one of the things that comes to mind is that we have great opportunities in English-speaking countries to study abroad. So I wouldn't let not speaking a foreign language deter you, but what's also really phenomenal is that we partner with a lot of universities around the world that you could be in a country where the national language is not English, but be taking your courses all in English, or partially in English and partially taking courses maybe even to learn the host country language. So there's a lot of opportunities to find a program that works well for your language needs. So like I said, faculty-led programs, in an English-speaking country or not in an English-speaking country, you'll be with other Hokies and your faculty leader will be delivering the content in English. And so that's one great fit. Like I said as well, we have exchange partners in English-speaking countries like the UK, Australia, New Zealand, Southern African countries, for example. So you'd have access to plenty of English-speaking locations, but you'd also be able to be, immersed in a culture and an environment that's different than the one that you're coming from here in the US. And then finally, taking classes in English, even while in a non-English speaking country.
And then turning gears a little bit again, these questions, we have a grouping of questions that are more, I guess, nuts and bolts types of questions in terms of how to go about applying for a study abroad program and what that process looks like, and what would make for a competitive application process, for a certain type of program.
Definitely. So if you go on our program search and you find any of the Virginia Tech faculty-led programs or exchange semester programs, you can see one of the little tab options when you look at that program says eligibility and application or something about eligibility for each of them. And you'll be able to look there and see, are there specific requirements that are needed for this program? Sometimes it might be a prerequisite course. Sometimes it might be a certain level of language proficiency if you would be taking classes in the local language there. Sometimes it's a certain GPA or area of study. So it's important to think about those specific eligibility requirements. But in general, in terms of becoming a competitive applicant, most programs are looking for a 2.5 GPA or higher, as well as a good academic fit, that you're going to be able to get courses that are going to apply for your area of study or that are applying to just your general progression at Virginia Tech as a student. So those are two key things. But again, it'll depend on the program. And some programs, like I said, have more specific requirements. So you'll be able to learn about that on the application page themselves. So if you go there, that's where you'll get that information. So also where you'll click the Apply Now button to start an application. You can't apply, unfortunately, so far out that if you're clicking it now, you won't be able to apply for 2 or 3 years into the future. It's just for the upcoming year of applications. But you can bookmark that page, go back to it in a year or so, and click that Apply Now button when it's time. But that's where you'll actually start your application if it's a Virginia Tech program. Like I said, if it's one of our semester exchanges or our faculty-led. If it's not a VT program, you should go to the website for the program you're looking at through a study abroad provider, see if they have any requirements. But they'll generally also be able to talk to you and work with you if there are certain areas you feel more concerned about, like maybe my GPA isn't as high as it's asking for. Is there any flexibility? Or I haven't had one specific course in this area yet that it's saying I might need. Is there any room there that I could, maybe take that class while I'm abroad even? So you can always ask. I say asking the question is a lot better than not asking the question and assuming that you can't do it, because there might be more flexibility there than you realize.
This next question is very specific and also a thoughtful question, I think. But if a student is considering a program in a location where the academic schedule doesn't necessarily align with the Virginia Tech schedule, how would that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that's the case in a lot of places around the world. The academic year does not exactly match an August to May academic fall and spring calendar, whether that's because it's in the Southern Hemisphere and the seasons are flipped. So the academic semesters are sometimes switched a little bit to reflect a different fall and spring. It can also be true that at some of our European partner universities, the academic year is pushed forward a little bit, where maybe the fall semester ends in January. So that's something to think about. So it's a great question because it applies to a lot of students in a lot of locations. So one way to work with that is choosing to go abroad in a semester that the overlap of the semester kind of pushes you into the summer. So maybe you start a little bit later, say February, and then you continue your classes into, say, sometime around June, but that doesn't affect your ability to come back that following fall to Virginia Tech on time. Another way to do it is to go abroad for a full academic year so that your timeline just matches that university's timeline and you come back on time for the fall to Virginia Tech. So that's 2 ways to do it. And then another final way to think about it is looking for programs that are a little bit more short-term, that might not overlap quite as much because they're offered in a winter or January term. They're offered maybe in a summer session or a spring session. And so those are those faculty-led or short-term study abroad provider programs typically. But I wouldn't be deterred just thinking, oh, the academic year is different at that country, because you can find a semester that fits a little bit better or even go abroad for a year.
This is a question that another one that I love for us to answer is kind of going back to basics. Why is the study abroad or an international experience, why does it matter? And why would it be important for incoming students to consider?
That is a great question. So I think the first thing that comes to mind is that study abroad challenges you to think about the world in a different way. And I know that can sound really cliche, but it's very true that international experiences put you in a space and a new culture and a new context that really makes you think more about who you are, as well as what your culture, your identity, your value system is, as well as learning to navigate a new system, a new way of thinking about the world, a new set of circumstances, even if it's just being in a place where maybe for the first time the language you're most comfortable with isn't being spoken widely, and understanding what is that experience like. I think it really opens your eyes to a way of viewing the world that's more empathetic, more flexible, more adaptable. And those are skills that, we see even employers talking about, that they want to hire students who have had experiences abroad, because those experiences not only shape the way that your, academic learning happens, because that's certainly a factor. It is study abroad. You're getting a whole new hands-on, new setting to learn things in, but it really does shape you as a person too, in the way that you work with others across difference, the way that you're able to communicate better with people from different backgrounds, and the way that you're ultimately able to problem solve and to figure things out. Nothing teaches you more about problem solving than being in a place where you're not familiar with the public transportation. You're not familiar with the way of shopping for groceries. You don't know exactly what time you should arrive for an event for. Things like that. It pushes you to think a little bit more and to learn a little bit about, how to navigate those challenges. And those are always the stories that we hear students have learned the most from, is those times they were uncomfortable, those times that they didn't know exactly what to do. And so the more you can challenge yourself, the more you get out of a study abroad experience, I think. Would you add anything to that, Rob, too?
I'd say, I think you hit it right on the mark. In terms of your point about employers really valuing the skill sets that students gather from a study abroad experience. I know personally I can speak to that as well. That was certainly the case for me. Again, I was a student at Virginia Tech and had the opportunity to study abroad. And I don't think I ever had a job interview where I wasn't asked about my study abroad experience. And really, like, what did that semester look like in Switzerland? Not necessarily so much about the academics that the courses that I took there, but really just what did I get from that experience in terms of the independence, the flexibility, the ability to adapt to certain environments. Again, a lot of things that you've already mentioned, Shelby, about working across differences and understanding different cultures. And that's very much the world that students will be going into after graduation, right? And so those are all things that obviously, you're not going to hear anything different from us because we're fully into this. But these are certainly things that I know I experienced personally. And being in the office for years now, like, we hear that constantly from students, and it is, we always say that it is a transformative experience, and it certainly is. So moving on to the next question then, again, just some general questions about study abroad in general, in terms of how many Hokies do we normally see studying abroad. Obviously it's a different year with the pandemic going on, and our numbers are quite different than it would normally be. But could you speak a little bit about just, again, how many we normally see, and possibly some of the more popular locations that we see students go?
Definitely. So we send about 1,500 to 1,600 Hokies abroad each year, which is great. It's about 17% of Hokies studying abroad, which we always want to see more students going abroad, but that's an amazing number. And it really is, you think about over 1,600 people each year studying abroad. That's a huge alumni network of Hokies who have all gone abroad and had these amazing experiences. And those experiences happen in literally every continent across the world, but some of our more popular locations, number one is definitely Switzerland, because we offer programs at the Steger Center. We also have a popular faculty-led option offered in Lugano, Switzerland each semester. So those are kind of locations that in Switzerland, it shows up in our numbers of how many students going abroad. We have a lot of students in Switzerland each semester, which is really great. A lot of great opportunities from there to also travel more widely in Europe as well. We also have a lot of students going abroad to Spain, to Italy, to Germany, to the UK, to Australia. But it's also exciting to see some less traditional study abroad locations taking root and seeing more and more students going abroad. We have partner universities in Ecuador, in Chile, in Argentina, and it's been really exciting to see more and more students going abroad to those locations in South and Central America, as well as to the University of Botswana and to certain faculty-led programs across Southern Africa. So, and some in Southeast Asia as well. We do have partner universities in Korea, in Japan, I could start listing off all the countries that we offer programming in, but it would be too long to list. But those are some of the more popular locations where we are seeing Hokies go abroad almost every semester.
Right. And since we brought up, obviously that there is a global pandemic happening, and that's something that our office and the university are closely monitoring. We often are getting a lot of questions on that right now, on whether study abroad is possible, in the next semester or even the next year. And what do we advise students to do in terms of planning perhaps for a future study abroad program?
That's a great question. So right now, there's definitely some time to plan a great study abroad experience, especially if you want to look towards the fall 2021 or spring 22, or even beyond that semesters. There's a lot of time, but for incoming Hokies and Hokies thinking about a study abroad experience a couple years into the future, we're excited to dream and plan and hope with you that all will be well and things will return to normal, whatever that might look like. But we are also supporting Hokies who are going abroad this spring semester. And so there are a lot of Virginia Tech students who've decided, I'm going to wait a semester and try, for the fall or spring, but there's lots who have also decided to move forward, and we're going to safely support them with their plans based around certain policies and requirements that are in place. And so those students are working closely with our office and are getting information and updates about how that spring semester might look and what's going to need to be in place for that to happen safely. So we are still currently very supportive of study abroad and excited to see lots and lots of Hokies going abroad when it's safe to do so. I do also want to mention that we have some resources on our website you could even explore now, called Global at Home. And we're really excited to start to see new and creative ways for students to engage with learning across difference and with new cultures. And even if it's just learning a new language for a little bit while you're dreaming and planning for when you will get to go abroad and maybe immerse yourself. We're really supportive of those experiences that can happen from your living room. You don't have to get on a plane to have a great intercultural experience or opportunity to learn about a new location or new culture. So you can explore those resources that we have, as well as more widely on the internet. There's lots of exciting ways to virtually connect with people in different situations, different cultures available right now. So we're excited to see that coming together, because that just means that more and more students will get the opportunity to learn and to grow through an intercultural experience.
And I'll just add a little bit to that in terms of, us fully realizing that a study abroad or an international experience isn't going to be accessible for every student out there as much as we would want it to. That's not the reality. But we would encourage students, particularly ones that are incoming, keep up with your language courses that you're taking in high school, and those requirements. Take those courses, continue them on in college. They're obviously related to study abroad. Those are going to help open doors to more programs in different locations and things like that. But it is a great way to continue that global mindset or that global learning. There are a number of courses that are offered by our Virginia Tech faculty here on the Blacksburg campus that relate to a lot of these, these international or intercultural concepts that we've been talking about. While it would be great to get that out of a study abroad experience, again, we realize that it's not going to be feasible for every student. So we just, again, encourage you to consider those things that are offered. Again, I think Global at Home through our website is a great start, but also talk with your academic advisor again and think about how you can still get a lot of this subject matter, even if it is here at home. And then let's see, switching gears from that then. I guess this is more in terms of, again, we touched on it a little bit in regards to COVID, but in terms of global safety in general, I think this is a question that obviously our students have, but also their parents. As we know, parents are also a very big part of the study abroad process in that decision. And so there are concerns about global safety. What resources do we have out there that can help address some of those concerns?
A great question. So one of our resources is an amazing person who works for our office. We have an assistant director for global safety and risk management who works tirelessly to make sure that Hokies going abroad are set up to do so safely and with the best information and the best resources to really be prepared abroad. Another great layer of that system and that support that we have in place is that there is 24/7 phone access to someone at Virginia Tech while you're abroad. If you were in a safety situation that you needed support in, you need to talk about a circumstance that had arisen while you were abroad, that's possible. And that's something that I think a lot of parents and students feel really good about and feel really comforted knowing that you will have access to something in the event that you needed support. We really make sure that students go abroad knowing, how could I get the support I needed in the event of an emergency while I was abroad? Who are the best points of contact in the country I'll be going to? Things like that, where, you know, we never hope or plan that that would be needed, but we always plan to prepare that you'll have the resources you need if something did arise. So we work really hard to make sure students feel prepared to go abroad. Faculty leaders work really hard as well to make sure that their students on a faculty-led program, even though you're with a group of other Hokies, even while you're abroad in that circumstance, you want to make sure you know and are prepared for different challenges that could come up. So faculty leaders are also working to prepare their students. And so we have a pretty robust system in place where there's a lot of different layers of support available to students abroad. Would you add anything to that, Ramlin?
I was just going to say that there, due to Virginia Tech policy, all students that are going abroad, regardless of what type of program, are required to get an insurance that is pretty comprehensive. It's also fairly inexpensive for what it offers, but it does, you know, in the event that something happens while you're abroad, this would help cover things like emergency evacuation if you had to return home early. And again, it's a great comprehensive insurance policy, and students before they go abroad are enrolled in that, and so there is some security, you know, again, in the event that something does happen. But I think you touched on all those points. We also, along with the staff member in our office who deals with global safety and risk management, the university also has a global oversight travel committee. And again, this committee is made up of all different representation from all different units on campus, and, you know, folks from Virginia Tech Police Department to our emergency management team to risk management and so forth and so on. And this is a committee that gets together pretty regularly to discuss things. There, you know, for certain programs that may have some extra concern attached to it, this committee would also review things like that before allowing the student to go. So again, as Shelby mentioned, there's quite a robust system in terms of safety, and so we would say that, you know, we understand the concern, and we're happy to talk through a lot of those concerns with you. And again, if not me or Shelby specifically, again, there are others in our office that are happy to do that. So let's see, move on to the next question. I think we're getting down to the last few questions here, Shelby. When would you say, again, I think this is a forward-thinking student, which we love to hear from, but when would you say, in terms of timeline, when is it best to start the study abroad process, the planning process? You know, how quickly can someone get started?
As soon as you want to start planning. That's a great question. So now is the answer, but no, I really think for all students, as early as you are interested in starting to think about a study abroad experience, you can do so. And just because you can't click that apply button right now to secure a place in a program doesn't mean you can't start taking those steps to make that the best possible fit for a program, to make sure that you're finding a program that is going to align with your academic needs, your personal needs, the best semester to be abroad for you. So I think the reflection process can start now, asking yourself those questions of, where do I want to be? What do I want to get out of it? Is there a language or a region I'm really interested in? You know, what are the factors that I'm interested in having while I'm abroad, whether that's a little more independence or a little more support? Those kind of questions you can ask yourself now, and that'll help you narrow down what type of program is the best fit. Then you can start the research process where you actually dive into, what are the different program types? Which one works for me? And what options do I have within that program type? Doing that research on our website, on other study abroad provider websites that we've talked about, that can start now, and as well as talking to your academic advisor as soon as you get to campus. That's important. Indicating as early as possible that studying abroad is one of your goals for your college experience, and you want to make that work. So whether that means looking 2 years into the future or even the following, year or semester. I think for most students, you need at least a year in advance of planning to make a study abroad really work well and fit well for your academic plans. So I'd say at least a year in advance is a good time frame. There's, of course, exceptions to that where some students, can find ways to do it a little bit faster, but a year is a lot of, that's the most flexible time that you'll have to really make that come to fruition.
I think that's great. And I would echo, again, giving yourself at least a year also opens up the door even wider for potential scholarship opportunities out there. You could get well ahead of certain deadlines and really make, give yourself the best shot possible at getting some of those funding opportunities. And again, I echo that at least a year is helpful. It can obviously happen with a shorter time span than that, but it might be a little bit more hectic in terms of getting everything straightened out, particularly if you're going on a program that might be a little bit more complicated in terms of, if it's not a Virginia Tech program and you have credits that you have to transfer back, and Shelby can speak a little bit more about that, but the credit transfer process can be quite tedious as well. So the more time you give yourself for that, the better off you'll be.
Definitely. On the credit transfer side of that, I work with a lot of students who are working really diligently to get what they need to have in order so that they can have their credit transfer pre-approved. And what that means basically is if you're taking classes at a non-Virginia Tech university, you'll have to transfer those credits. And whether that's at Nova Community College or New River Community College or Trento University in Italy, any outside entity that you're taking credits into Virginia Tech, you'll be transferring them in. And so for all of our study abroad students going to one of our exchange partner universities or to a study abroad provider program, that just means that you're going to have to get those credits pre-approved to come back to Virginia Tech the way that you're expecting them to. So that's really important, especially for students who are saying, I've found this university that offers classes, let's say in electrical engineering, and I need these classes to stay on track for graduation. So what you're going to do at that point is work with your advisor to evaluate, are those classes equivalent to Virginia Tech courses? And you'll get the syllabi from that university or that program, provide them to your advisor, and work with our office as well to make sure that you're checking all those boxes to get the pre-approval you need. So like Ramlin said, starting early for that is always better, so you can identify, there's, I thought I was going to be able to get the classes I needed, but I'm actually going to need to switch gears and look at a different university. And that can happen, but knowing that 6 months in advance is a lot better than 2 months in advance. So that process is important to think about.
Absolutely. I guess we'll close off with this question, Shelby, and it's just a general one in terms of kind of next steps. And again, and we realize that a lot of who we're talking with right now are prospective students. But how would somebody who is interested in studying abroad as a Virginia Tech student, how would they get in contact with us? And again, what are some of those first initial steps that they should take?
Right, great question. So you can reach out to our office. Our office is accessible by email and by Zoom right now in the virtual environment. And we want to be a resource to you. I've spoken with some other prospective students as well, just because they want to get a better sense of, study abroad, something I value, something I'm excited about, something I've wanted my whole life, or I just started wanting this week, but I'm excited about planning. And I'm always happy to talk to prospective students who are trying to get a sense of, is Virginia Tech a good fit to meet my study abroad goals and needs? And we want to be supportive of your plans as you start thinking about, where you're going to spend 4 or 5 years for your degree. So you can reach out to our office. But then once you, kind of get to campus, you can access our office, hopefully in person at some point in the not so distant future. But for now, our website's a great resource for you to explore. The link that Ramlin shared earlier, globaleducation.vt.edu. And then our email address is just vtabroad@vt.edu. So either of those places are great to browse and learn more, to send us an email directly to get in touch, and we're happy to talk. But yeah, like I mentioned, start the reflection process now, ask yourself those questions, and start just exploring. I think there's some amazing resources out there, like 360-degree virtual tours of cities that you could even start looking through now. And we have those linked on our website. So that Global at Home section you can explore, but start dreaming and scheming and thinking, where would I want to spend a semester or even a year? And we'll help you make that possible when you get to Tech.
I would also add to start talking to your parents about it as well. Again, we mentioned it earlier. They're very much part of this process as well. And so if it is something that you want to consider and give pretty good thought to, make sure that your parents are also involved in that. I would also be remiss as the communications and marketing person if I didn't mention our social media accounts. You can certainly reach us through those accounts as well. We're pretty active on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. Those are our three main ones. And you can certainly send in questions through those channels as well. But again, just if there's anything that we can provide in terms of just answers, again, dig through the website. There's a lot of great content there right now, particularly because of Study Abroad Week. There's a lot of new content there. So if you've visited before, there's a lot more new things that are there now. So be sure to check that out. Anything else, Shelby, that we want to mention before we sign off?
I don't think so. I think we summed it up, but definitely grateful for you all joining us today, and for those who are watching, later on. Glad that you want to learn more about studying abroad. Glad that you're excited about the future and about a time where you can travel, and we're excited to support you when you want to make that possible.
Absolutely. And again, thank you so much. From two Hokie alums here, we certainly hope that we'll see you here on campus at some point. Again, we're here to support you, and we're happy to answer any questions. So again, thank you for joining us this afternoon on a Saturday. And again, go Hokies.